The soft morning light filtered through lace curtains as little Lily pressed her nose against the window of her grandmother's house. Rain tapped gently on the roof, canceling the planned trip to the playground. Lily's small shoulders slumped in disappointment until her grandmother called her from another room. "Come see what I have in here." "Little one," grandmother's voice sang out, warm and inviting like fresh-baked cookies. Lily wandered into the sitting room she hadn't paid much attention to before. There, taking up much of the wall space, stood something large and shiny. A piano. Not just any piano, but a beautiful old upright that had belonged to Lily's great-grandfather. The dark wood gleamed from years of careful polishing, and when grandmother lifted the cover, Lily gasped at the row of black and white keys that seemed to stretch forever. "Can I touch it?" Lily whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. "Of course," grandmother nodded, patting the bench. "That's what it's for." Lily climbed onto the bench, her feet dangling far above the floor. Her tiny fingers pressed down on a white key and a clear note rang out, filling the room. She giggled and pressed another, then another. Not random pounding like most 4-year-olds might do, but careful, deliberate touches. One note, then the next, as if she were trying to find something hidden among the keys. From the doorway, Lily's parents watched with quiet surprise. Both taught music at the local community college. Dad specialized in piano while Mom taught theory and composition. But they had never pushed their daughter toward music. They believed children should find their own passions. Yet here she was, completely absorbed in the instrument. "Listen to how she's exploring," Dad whispered to Mom. "She's not just hitting keys. She's listening." Grandmother smiled knowingly. "Just like you did at her age," she told Dad. "Music runs deep in this family." The rainy afternoon stretched on, and Lily remained at the piano. When Dad finally sat beside her and played a simple melody, the beginning of Beethoven's Fur Elise, a piece he was preparing for an upcoming faculty recital, Lily watched his fingers, with unusual focus for a child her age. "Again, please," she requested when he finished. Dad played the opening measures once more, those famous notes that even people who know nothing about classical music often recognize. When he finished, Lily reached out her small hand and pressed a key. Then another, then another. The 3 adults in the room froze. Lily was playing the beginning of Fur Elise, not perfectly and not with the proper fingering, but the notes were there in the right order. After hearing it just twice, "That's not normal," Mom whispered, her hand clutching Dad's shoulder. "No," Dad agreed quietly. "It's extraordinary." Over the next few days at home, Lily kept asking to play the pretty music. Her parents brought out an old keyboard they had stored away, placing it at a height she could reach. Lily would spend hours figuring out more of Fur Elise by ear, her determination unusual for someone so young. While other children her age might be singing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, or banging randomly on toy instruments, Lily was teaching herself Beethoven. Her parents were careful not to make too much fuss, not wanting to pressure her. But they observed, took videos, and gently offered guidance when she got stuck. Should we get her lessons? Mom wondered one night after Lily had fallen asleep. "Is 4 too young?" "For most children, maybe," Dad replied. But Lily isn't most children. They reached out to Professor Zhang, a colleague who specialized in teaching gifted young musicians. When they showed him the videos of Lily playing, his eyebrows shot up. "In 30 years of teaching, I've seen maybe 2 or 3 children with this kind of natural ability," he said, "and none so young." Professor Zhang agreed to meet Lily, expecting a shy, overwhelmed child. Instead, he found an eager student who couldn't wait to learn more. "Play something hard," she requested when they first met, her eyes serious beneath her bangs. Professor Zhang played a complex passage from a Mozart sonata. Lily listened, then looked thoughtful. "That's too hard for me right now," she said with surprising self-awareness. "But I'll learn it someday." Her first proper lesson was meant to last 30 minutes, an appropriate length for a 4-year-old's attention span. It stretched to nearly an hour because Lily refused to stop. When Professor Zhang showed her the correct fingering for Fur Elise, her tiny hands struggled to stretch across the keys. "My fingers are too small," she frowned, looking at her hands as if they had betrayed her. "They'll grow," Professor Zhang assured her, "and meanwhile we'll find ways to make it work." And they did. Lily practiced every day, not because her parents made her, but because she couldn't stay away from the piano. She would wake up early and pad into the living room in her pajamas, climbing onto the bench to practice before breakfast. Sometimes her parents would find her with her dolls arranged as an audience, giving them a concert and bowing seriously when she finished playing. Unlike many musical prodigies who are pushed by ambitious parents, Lily pulled her family along in her wake. Her enthusiasm was pure and unbridled. When she mastered a difficult passage after days of struggle, her entire face would light up with joy. "Did you hear that?" she would call out to whoever was nearby. "I did it!" By the time 3 months had passed, Lily could play Fur Elise from beginning to end. Not with the speed and flourish of a professional pianist, but with surprising depth for someone who still needed a step stool to reach the bathroom sink. Most remarkably, she played from memory, never needing sheet music. "She feels the music," Professor Zhang told her parents. "Many students with technical ability lack this emotional connection, but Lily plays from her heart." It was Professor Zhang who first suggested recording a proper video of Lily playing, not just a casual clip on a phone, but a well-lit, well-recorded performance that captured both the sound and the sight of this tiny person creating such beautiful music. "People should see this," he said, not to pressure her, but because true talent deserves to be witnessed. Lily wore her favorite blue dress for the recording, her hair held back with butterfly clips. She was nervous at first, playing too fast and making mistakes. But after a few false starts, she closed her eyes, took a deep breath just as Professor Zhang had taught her, and began again. This time, magic happened. As she played Fur Elise, something in the room shifted. Her parents, who had heard her play this piece hundreds of times by now, felt tears spring to their eyes. Professor Zhang sat perfectly still, afraid to break the spell. Lily swayed gently as she played, her expression changing with the music, serious during the minor passages, lighter during the major sections. When she hit the challenging middle part, her small face showed intense concentration, her tongue poking slightly from the corner of her mouth. And as she returned to the familiar opening theme for the finale, a small smile appeared, as if she and the music shared a secret. When the last note faded, there was silence. Then Professor Zhang began to applaud, and her parents joined in, their faces shining with emotion. Lily looked up, suddenly shy again. "Was that good?" she asked. "That was beautiful," her mother said, kneeling to hug her. With permission from Lily's parents, Professor Zhang shared the video with a few colleagues. They shared it with others. Within days, the video had spread through classical music circles, then beyond, capturing the attention of people who normally had no interest in piano recitals. There was something about the contrast, this tiny child in butterfly hair clips playing Beethoven with such feeling, that touched people deeply. Comments poured in from around the world. Most were supportive and amazed, though some questioned whether such early intensity was healthy for a child. Lily's parents were careful to shield her from both excessive praise and criticism, wanting to keep her relationship with music pure and joyful, but they couldn't shield her from the attention entirely. A local news station asked to do a feature on her, then a national morning show called. Lily's parents turned down most requests, agreeing only to a short segment on a respected arts program where the focus remained on the music, not on creating a spectacle. Throughout it all, Lily remained remarkably unchanged. She still played with blocks and stuffed animals, still had tantrums when she was tired, still needed help tying her shoes. But at the piano, she transformed into something else. Not quite an adult, but a pure vessel for music that seemed to come from somewhere beyond her years. It was the director of the Young Virtuoso World Tournament who reached out after seeing Lily's performance on the arts program. The tournament, held annually in Vienna, typically accepted children between 7 and 12 years old. Never in its history had they considered a 4-year-old contestant. "We have never made an age exception," the director explained in her email, "but we have also never encountered talent like this in one so young. Would you consider submitting a formal audition video?" Lily's parents were hesitant. Their daughter was thriving with her current routine of lessons and home performances. Did she need the pressure of international competition? Was it too much too soon? "Let's ask Lily," Dad suggested finally, in simple terms that she can understand. They sat her down one evening after her practice session, explaining that some important music people in a faraway city wanted to hear her play in a special concert with other children who loved piano. "Would you like that?" Mom asked carefully. "You don't have to if you don't want to." Lily thought about it seriously, her forehead crinkling in concentration. "Would I play Fur Elise?" she asked. "Yes, if that's what you want to play." Dad nodded. "Then yes," she said with the simple certainty of childhood. "I want to play Fur Elise for everyone." And so the decision was made, setting in motion events that would take a little girl from her grandmother's piano to the grand stage of the world's most prestigious youth music competition. A journey that would astound everyone, except perhaps the small pianist herself, who simply loved the way the music made her feel. The kitchen timer rang, and Lily's mom called out, "Practice time is over, sweetheart." Lily's fingers hovered above the keys. 5 more minutes, please. I almost have it right. This had become their daily routine in the months following the invitation to the Young Virtuoso World Tournament. What started as 30-minute practice sessions had gradually stretched to an hour, then 90 minutes, and now 2 hours divided into morning and afternoon sessions. Not because anyone forced her, but because Lily herself couldn't bear to stop. "Just this once," Mom said with a smile. Knowing it was never just once, she watched her daughter's tiny fingers stretch across the keyboard, reaching for notes that adults found challenging. Sometimes it seemed impossible that those small hands could create such beautiful sounds. Professor Zhang had been visiting 3 times a week now, amazed at Lily's progress. "Most students her age, even older students, need months to learn what she absorbs in days," he told her parents. Today he sat quietly in the corner, making notes as Lily worked through a particularly tricky passage in Fur Elise. The middle section had given her trouble, with its faster tempo and more complex fingering. "Remember what we talked about?" he said gently when she fumbled the same part for the 3rd time. "When your fingers get stuck, it's not just about moving faster. It's about preparing them. Think ahead to where they need to be next." Lily nodded seriously, her face scrunched in concentration. She tried again, this time slowing down just before the difficult section, positioning her fingers carefully, then gliding through it smoothly. Her face broke into a delighted grin. "I did it." "Yes, you did." Professor Zhang nodded, his usual reserve softening into genuine warmth. "And do you know why you got it this time?" Lily thought for a moment. "Because I didn't rush. I gave my fingers time to get ready." "Exactly. Sometimes we need to slow down to speed up. That's true in music and in life." These little lessons were woven throughout their sessions. Professor Zhang never spoke down to Lily despite her age. He treated her musical intelligence with respect, explaining concepts that many would consider beyond a 4-year-old's understanding. To everyone's surprise, she grasped them. When he talked about dynamics, playing some parts louder and others softer, Lily instantly understood how this created emotional texture. When he explained phrasing, how notes grouped together like sentences in speech, she began shaping musical lines with natural instinct. "It's like she's always known this, and we're just reminding her," Dad remarked one evening after a particularly productive lesson. "Some people are born with music already inside them," Professor Zhang replied. "Our job is simply to help them let it out." As the tournament grew closer, preparations intensified. Lily's parents had long discussions about how to maintain balance in their daughter's life. They were determined that this opportunity wouldn't rob her of her childhood or turn joy into pressure. "I've seen too many young talents burn out because adults push them too hard," Dad said, thinking of former students whose parents had treated them as achievements rather than children. They established firm rules. Practice would never exceed 3 hours daily, split into smaller sessions. Lily would have plenty of time for normal play. They would watch carefully for signs of stress or diminishing enthusiasm. And most importantly, they would remind her often that they loved her completely separate from her piano playing. One rainy afternoon, Mom found Lily staring out the window instead of practicing. "Everything okay, honey?" she asked, sitting next to her on the piano bench. Lily's small fingers traced patterns on the wooden lid covering the keys. "What if I make a mistake in Vienna?" So that was it. Performance anxiety was setting in, even at 4 years old. Mom pulled her daughter close. "Then you'll keep playing just like you do when you make mistakes during practice." "Everyone makes mistakes, sweetheart. Even the greatest pianists in the world." "Even Mr. Beethoven?" Lily asked, referring to the composer as if he were a friend. "Especially Mr. Beethoven," Mom smiled. "Did you know he sometimes got so carried away during performances that he broke piano strings?" Lily's eyes widened. "Really? Really?" And you know what? People still loved his playing because it came from his heart. This seemed to comfort her. She opened the keyboard cover and played the opening of Fur Elise thoughtfully, deliberately making a small mistake, then continuing on. She looked up at her mother with a triumphant smile. "See? I kept going. That's my girl," Mom said, blinking back unexpected tears as the weeks passed. Professor Zhang brought in colleagues occasionally to listen to Lily play, helping her get used to performing for strangers. A retired concert pianist who had performed in venues around the world sat in on one of these sessions. "Play as if you're telling me a story," the old pianist suggested when Lily seemed nervous. "What kind of story?" Lily asked. "Whatever story the music makes you feel," came the reply. Lily closed her eyes for a moment, then began to play. This time something new emerged in her performance, a narrative quality, as if each phrase were leading naturally to the next, telling a tale without words. When she finished, the old pianist was quiet for a long moment. "Young lady," he said finally, his voice slightly hoarse, "you have something very special. Not just talent, which many possess, but the ability to make others feel what you feel through your music. Don't ever lose that." The video they submitted to the tournament committee was recorded on a Sunday morning. Lily wore her favorite yellow dress, her hair tied back with a ribbon. They chose the living room rather than a formal setting, wanting to capture the natural environment where her gift had flourished. Professor Zhang suggested they record several takes, but in the end, they submitted the first one. Despite a couple of small technical imperfections, it had an emotional honesty that the later, more polished versions somehow lacked. The response came faster than expected. The committee had not only accepted Lily's application, but had created a special category for her age group, though she would be the only contestant in it. This way, they explained, she could participate without being directly compared to children with years more of physical development and training. The news brought both excitement and practical challenges. There were passports to arrange, flights to book, accommodations to secure. Vienna was halfway around the world, and traveling there with a 4-year-old, especially one carrying such extraordinary expectations, required careful planning. Lily's grandmother insisted on coming along for support. "This all started at my piano," she reminded them. "I want to see where it leads." As their departure approached, Lily became increasingly curious about Vienna. Her parents bought children's books about Austria and showed her pictures of the magnificent Musikverein, where the competition would be held. "That's where I'll play?" she asked, staring at images of the Golden Hall with its ornate columns and crystal chandeliers. "That's right," Dad confirmed. "It's one of the most beautiful concert halls in the world." "Will Mr. Beethoven be there?" Lily asked. Her parents exchanged glances, momentarily unsure how to respond. "Mr. Beethoven lived a long time ago," Mom explained gently. "But he lived in Vienna, the city we're going to visit. He walked those same streets and played in some of the same buildings where you'll be playing." Lily considered this with solemn interest. "So his music is still there, even if he isn't?" "Exactly," Dad smiled, touched by her understanding. "That's the amazing thing about great music. It stays alive long after the people who created it are gone." The night before their departure, Lily couldn't sleep. Her suitcase stood packed in the corner of her room, topped with a small backpack containing her favorite books and toys for the journey. Her special concert outfit hung on the closet door, a simple but elegant blue dress with matching shoes. Mom found her sitting up in bed, hugging her knees. "Nervous about the big trip?" she asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. Lily nodded. "What if the people in Vienna don't like the way I play?" "Oh, sweetheart," Mom gathered her close. "The way you play comes from inside you, from your heart and your understanding of the music. Some people might connect with that more than others, but that doesn't change how special it is. Professor Zhang says I should just think about the music, not the people listening." "That's very wise advice," Mom agreed. "When you play, it's just you and Mr. Beethoven having a conversation through the piano. The rest of us are just lucky to overhear it." This image made Lily smile. She nestled down under her covers, suddenly looking very small and young, a reminder that despite her extraordinary talent, she was still just a child embarking on an adventure both thrilling and overwhelming. The flight to Vienna was Lily's first time on an airplane. Her eyes grew round as dinner plates during takeoff, her small hand gripping her father's tightly. Once they reached cruising altitude, she pressed her face against the window, marveling at the clouds below. They looked like giant cotton balls, she whispered in awe. During the long journey, her parents took turns keeping her entertained with games and stories. Occasionally, she would drum her fingers on the tray table, practicing passages of Fur Elise silently, lost in concentration. An elderly passenger across the aisle noticed and smiled knowingly at Lily's parents. "Musician?" she asked. "She's playing in the Young Virtuoso tournament," Dad explained quietly. The woman's eyebrows rose in surprise as she looked at Lily's small form. "Remarkable," she murmured, wishing her all the best. When they finally arrived in Vienna, exhausted but excited, the city welcomed them with a gentle spring rain. From the taxi window, Lily watched as they passed grand old buildings, statues, and parks bursting with flowers. "It looks like a fairy tale," she said, her voice filled with wonder. Their hotel was close to the historic center, within walking distance of the Musikverein. After settling in and resting, the family took a short walk to get their bearings and see the venue from the outside. Standing in front of the imposing yellow building with its classical columns, Lily suddenly seemed very quiet. "Are you okay?" Grandmother asked, kneeling beside her. Lily nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on the building. "Mr. Beethoven's music is waiting for me in there," she said softly. "I can feel it." The morning of the competition registration dawned bright and clear. Lily woke up early, bouncing on her parents' bed with excitement. "Today we go to the big gold room," she announced, referring to the Musikverein's famous golden hall with its gleaming decor. Her parents exchanged sleepy smiles. Despite the jet lag that had kept them awake much of the night, Lily seemed perfectly adjusted to Vienna time, her energy boundless. After breakfast, they made their way to the Musikverein for the official registration and orientation. The grand building looked even more impressive in the morning sunlight, its yellow facade glowing against the blue sky. Inside, the lobby bustled with activity, families speaking various languages, children clutching sheet music, officials with clipboards directing people to different areas. Lily held tightly to her mother's hand, suddenly quiet as she took in the scene. Most of the other competitors towered over her, some nearly teenagers. A few curious glances came their way. Word had spread about the exceptional 4-year-old contestant. At the registration desk, they were greeted by Miss Weber, one of the competition organizers who had been corresponding with them. "Ah, the Lynn family," she said warmly, bending down to Lily's level. "You must be our youngest musician ever. We are very excited to hear you play." Lily gave a small, polite nod. "Thank you for letting me come," she said in a voice barely above a whisper. Ms. Weber smiled and handed them a packet with schedules, rules, and a badge for Lily with her name and contestant number, 42. "We have arranged a special practice room for you," Ms. Weber explained. "Each contestant gets time slots to rehearse on similar pianos to the performance grand. Your first slot is at 3 this afternoon." She then led them on a brief tour, showing them the backstage area and finally, opening the doors to the magnificent golden hall itself. Lily's mouth formed a perfect O as she stepped into the vast ornate space. The room seemed to glow from within. Golden carvings adorned the walls and ceiling, massive chandeliers sparkled overhead, and row upon row of red velvet seats faced the elevated stage where a gleaming black concert grand piano waited. "That's where I'll play?" Lily asked, her voice echoing slightly in the empty hall. "Yes," Ms. Weber nodded. "Tomorrow afternoon." Lily let go of her mother's hand and walked slowly toward the stage, her small figure dwarfed by the grandeur around her. Her family and Ms. Weber watched as she climbed the steps, approached the piano, and gently touched its shiny surface with reverent fingers. "Hello," they heard her whisper to the instrument. "I'm Lily." Ms. Weber turned to Lily's parents with moist eyes. "In 30 years of organizing this competition, I have never seen such a natural connection between child and instrument. It's as if she's greeting an old friend." The rest of the day passed in a blur of activities. They attended an opening ceremony where all contestants were introduced. When Lily's name was called, a murmur rippled through the crowd as she stepped forward, so tiny compared to the other musicians. Some of the other children looked at her with curiosity, others with skepticism. One boy, about 12 years old, whispered to his friend loudly enough to be overheard, "Is this some kind of joke?" "She's a baby," Ms. Weber explained. "She's 4 years old." "She's a baby," Ms. Weber repeated. "She's 4 years old." "She's a baby," Ms. Weber repeated. "She's 4 years old." "Is this some kind of joke?" Lily's father tensed, but her mother squeezed his hand. "She'll answer them with her playing," she whispered. During their assigned practice time, Lily got her first chance to try the practice piano, a smaller version of the concert grand, but still much larger than the one she used at home. Her feet couldn't reach the pedals when sitting normally, so her father had brought a special adjustable pedal extender recommended by Professor Zhang. As Lily began to play, her initial tentativeness gave way to growing confidence. The acoustics in the room were different from what she was used to, making her notes ring out with new clarity and depth. She closed her eyes, letting the sound wash over her, making small adjustments to her touch to explore the piano's voice. A knock at the practice room door interrupted them precisely at the end of their allotted hour. The next contestant, a serious-looking girl of about 10, waited impatiently with her mother. As Lily gathered her music, the girl sat at the piano and immediately launched into a furious, technically impressive piece, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Outside in the hallway, Lily looked up at her father with wide eyes. "She plays very fast," she said. Dad knelt down to her level. "Yes, she does. Everyone has their own special way of making music. Speed is just one way to impress people, but it's not the only thing that matters." "What matters most?" Lily asked. Dad thought for a moment. "Connecting with the music and helping others feel what you feel when you play. That's what you do so naturally, Lily." That evening, back at the hotel, they ordered room service for dinner. Grandmother had brought small gifts to help calm Lily's nerves: a new ribbon for her hair, a tiny music box that played, coincidentally, a simplified version of Fur Elise. "Look," Lily said, opening and closing the box. "It's playing my song, but it doesn't play all the notes." "That's because the full piece is too complex for a little music box," Mom explained. "Just like some people might think Fur Elise is too complex for a little girl. But you've proven them wrong, haven't you?" Lily nodded, winding the music box again. "I know all the notes, even the hard ones in the middle." "You certainly do," Grandmother agreed, helping Lily into her pajamas. "And tomorrow everyone else will know it too." That night, as her parents thought she was sleeping, they heard Lily whispering. Peeking into her room, they saw her sitting up in bed, her fingers moving silently in the air, practicing her piece. "Mr. Beethoven," she was saying softly, "please help me remember all your music tomorrow." Mom and Dad exchanged glances, their hearts full. They had worried about putting pressure on their daughter, about pushing her into something too demanding for her age. But moments like this reminded them that Lily's connection to music came from within, a genuine love that no one had forced upon her. Morning brought fresh challenges. During breakfast, Lily barely touched her food, unusual for a child who normally had a healthy appetite. "My tummy feels funny," she confessed when her mother asked what was wrong. "That's perfectly normal," Mom assured her. "Even grown-up musicians get butterflies before they perform." "There are butterflies in my tummy?" Lily asked, her eyes wide. This made everyone laugh, breaking some of the tension. "It just means you're a little nervous," Dad explained, "and that's okay. Those nervous feelings can actually help you focus and play your best." Lily considered this, like when I feel excited and scared at the same time on the big slide at the park. "Exactly like that," Mom nodded. "And just like on the slide, once you start, the scary feeling turns into something fun." The backstage area was chaotic when they arrived. Contestants from the junior division were warming up. Parents were adjusting ties and smoothing dresses, and competition officials rushed about with last-minute changes to the program. Lily's performance was scheduled for just after the lunch break. As they waited, they could hear the other contestants playing, each one impressively skilled, some with technical prowess far beyond their years. A boy around 11 years old finished his piece to enthusiastic applause. As he came backstage, flushed with success, he noticed Lily sitting quietly in her special blue dress, her feet dangling from the chair. "You're the little one everyone's talking about," he said, not unkindly. "Aren't you scared?" Lily looked up at him. "Yes," she admitted. "But my dad says that's normal." The boy nodded. "I've been doing competitions since I was 7, and I still get scared every time." He lowered his voice confidentially. "I mess up almost every time too, but I just keep going. The judges only notice if you stop." "That's what my teacher says too," Lily replied with a small smile. "Good luck out there, tiny pianist," the boy said, giving her a friendly wave as he was led away by his parents. This brief exchange seemed to calm Lily. She sat straighter, her hands folded neatly in her lap as they waited for her turn. The lunch break came and went. Lily managed to eat a few bites of a sandwich her mother had packed, knowing that competition food might be unfamiliar. Then Ms. Weber appeared, clipboard in hand. "Contestant number 42, Lily Lynn, you're up in 5 minutes." The moment had arrived. Dad helped adjust the special bench that had been prepared, one that would position Lily at the right height for the massive concert grand. Mom straightened the blue ribbon in her hair one last time. Grandmother gave her hand a gentle squeeze. "Remember," Dad said softly, "just you and Mr. Beethoven having a conversation through the piano." Lily nodded solemnly. Ms. Weber led her to the stage entrance, where they waited for the previous performer to finish and the applause to die down. Then Ms. Weber gestured, and Lily walked out onto the vast stage of the Musikverein's Golden Hall all alone, a tiny figure in blue against the backdrop of gold and red. The walk to the piano seemed endless. From the audience came a collective murmur of surprise at her small stature, followed by a hush of anticipation. Lily reached the piano and turned to face the audience. Hundreds of faces stared back at her from the dimly lit hall. She gave a small, practiced bow, then climbed onto the bench adjusted by the stage technician to accommodate her height. For a moment, she sat perfectly still, her hands in her lap, gathering herself. The silence in the hall was complete, everyone waiting, wondering what would happen when this child, barely visible above the piano, began to play. Lily took a deep breath, raised her hands to the keyboard, and in that moment, something extraordinary happened. All traces of nervousness seemed to leave her body. Her face took on a serene, focused expression beyond her years. And as her fingers touched the first notes of Fur Elise, the boundary between 4-year-old girl and timeless music began to dissolve. The first notes of Fur Elise floated through the Golden Hall, pure and clear. From their seats in the front row, Lily's parents leaned forward, barely breathing. This wasn't just their daughter on stage. This was a musician connecting with centuries of tradition. Lily's small fingers moved with delicate precision across the keys. The famous opening melody, those notes that everyone recognizes, came alive under her touch. But there was something different about her playing today. Perhaps it was the magnificent Bosendorfer grand piano, its rich tone filling the historic hall. Perhaps it was the exceptional acoustics designed over a century ago to carry every nuance to the farthest corner of the room. Or perhaps it was Lily herself, who seemed transformed on stage. Gone was the nervous 4-year-old from breakfast. In her place sat a young artist completely absorbed in her music. As she transitioned into the more challenging middle section, a slight frown of concentration appeared on her face. This was the part that had given her trouble during practice. Faster, more complex, requiring quick hand movements across the keyboard. For a heart-stopping moment, she hesitated. In the audience, Dad closed his eyes, silently willing her forward. Mom gripped grandmother's hand so tightly her knuckles turned white. Then Lily took a barely noticeable breath and plunged ahead. Her hands found their rhythm again, dancing through the difficult passage with newfound confidence. When she successfully navigated the trickiest section, a whisper of appreciation rippled through the audience. Those who knew the piece recognized the achievement. The judges, seated at their special table, exchanged glances. One of them, a stern-looking woman with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun, actually removed her glasses for a better look at the tiny performer. Another judge was making rapid notes, his pen hardly leaving the paper. A third sat perfectly still, eyes closed, listening with complete concentration. As Lily returned to the familiar melody for the final section, something magical happened. She began to sway gently with the music, her expression softening. It was as if she'd moved beyond just playing the notes correctly, and was now telling a story through them. This was what Professor Jung had tried to explain to her parents months ago, the difference between technical skill and artistry. Plenty of students could master the mechanics of a piece. Far fewer could make listeners feel something. Somehow Lily had crossed that threshold. When the final note faded away, there was a moment of complete silence. Lily sat perfectly still, hands resting in her lap, head bowed slightly as if listening to an echo only she could hear. Then the applause began. It started tentatively, almost in disbelief, then swelled into a genuine ovation. People rose to their feet. moved not just by the novelty of seeing someone so young play so well, but by the authentic emotion in her performance. Lily looked up, slightly startled by the sound. Her serious expression dissolved into a shy smile as she remembered to stand and bow, just as she'd practiced at home. The bow was adorably awkward, a little too deep and a little too quick, reminding everyone that despite her remarkable talent, she was still a child. As she left the stage, the applause continued. In the wings, her father scooped her up in a hug, whispering, "You were amazing, Lily Bear." Mom was there too, tears streaming down her face. "How do you feel?" she asked when Dad finally set Lily down. Lily considered the question with typical 4-year-old directness. Happy, she decided. And hungry. This made them all laugh, breaking the overwhelming emotion of the moment. Trust a child to bring things back to the practical. Ms. Weber appeared, clearly impressed. "That was extraordinary," she said. The judges were very moved. "Now you are free until the evening ceremony. Perhaps you should get some rest and something to eat, yes?" They left through the artist's entrance, avoiding the crowd. Outside, the Vienna afternoon was golden and warm. They found a small cafe with outdoor seating, where Lily ate ice cream while her parents and grandmother tried to process what they'd just witnessed. "I knew she was talented," grandmother said. "But that was something else entirely. Did you see the audience?" Even the other contestants' parents were applauding. Dad nodded, still looking slightly dazed. "It's as if she becomes someone else when she plays, someone older, wiser." "Not someone else," Mom corrected gently. "Just more fully herself. The music lets her express things she doesn't have words for yet." Lily, oblivious to their analysis, happily swung her legs under the table and pointed at a passing dog. "Look, he's bigger than me." They spent the afternoon walking through a nearby park, deliberately keeping things low-key. Lily needed time to be just a child again, running on the grass, feeding ducks, playing on the swings. Several times she asked when they would know the results. "Tonight at the ceremony," Dad explained. "But remember, it doesn't matter what place you get. What matters is that you shared your music and did your very best." Lily nodded seriously. "I think Mr. Beethoven would be happy with how I played his song." "I think so too," grandmother agreed, her voice thick with emotion. Back at the hotel, Lily napped while her parents quietly discussed the possibilities. They had tried to keep their expectations realistic. The other contestants were older, with years more training and physical development. Many played more technically difficult pieces. "Even if she doesn't place," Mom said, "what happened today was something special. Did you see the audience? They weren't just being nice to a cute kid. They were genuinely moved." Dad was about to respond when his phone buzzed with a message from Professor Zhang back home. "Just received word from colleagues at the competition. Unprecedented reaction to Lily's performance. How is she holding up?" He showed the message to his wife. News travels fast in the classical music world. That evening, they returned to the Musikverein for the awards ceremony. The Golden Hall was even more magnificent at night, the chandeliers casting a warm glow over the assembled crowd. Contestants sat in a special section near the front, all dressed in their finest clothes, their faces showing varying degrees of nervousness and anticipation. Lily, in the same blue dress but with a fresh ribbon in her hair, sat between two much taller children, looking almost like a doll placed there by accident. The boy next to her, the same one who had wished her luck earlier, gave her a friendly thumbs up. The ceremony began with speeches from the organizers and sponsors, most in German with English translations. Lily listened politely but began to fidget as it stretched on. Mom had packed a small silent toy in her purse for just this purpose, a tiny felt mouse that Lily could hold discreetly. Finally, they began announcing the awards, starting with special mentions and moving up to the bronze, silver, and gold medals in each age category. The oldest group went first, then the middle division. When they reached the youngest division, ages 7 to 9, the head judge took the microphone. "Before we announce these awards," she said in accented English, "the judges wish to make a special statement. This year, our competition welcomed an unprecedented participant, 4-year-old Lily Lynn, who performed Beethoven's Fur Elise with remarkable artistry." A spotlight found Lily in her seat, and she blinked in surprise. "While we created a special category to allow her participation," the judge continued, After her performance, we faced a difficult decision. Her playing demonstrated a level of musicality that transcended simple age categories. The audience murmured in interest. Lily's parents exchanged confused glances. Therefore, the judge announced, the panel has unanimously decided to create a new award, the Young Virtuoso Exceptional Artistry Medal, which we present to Lily Lynn. Applause erupted as Lily was invited to the stage. She walked up the steps carefully, looking tiny against the backdrop of the grand hall. The head judge, the stern woman with the silver bun, actually knelt down to place a gold medal on a blue ribbon around Lily's neck. Then she handed her a certificate in an ornate folder almost as big as Lily herself. The judge leaned in close to the microphone so Lily could reach it. "Would you like to say something?" she asked gently. Lily looked out at the sea of faces, then spoke in a clear, small voice that somehow carried throughout the hall. "Thank you for letting me play Mr. Beethoven's music," she said. "It made me very happy." Her simple sincerity brought another round of warm applause. As she returned to her seat, medal swinging against her chest, other young competitors reached out to congratulate her. High fives, pats on the shoulder, genuine admiration crossing age barriers. The rest of the ceremony continued, but Lily's family hardly noticed who won the other divisions. They were too busy watching their daughter, who was examining her medal with fascination, holding it up to catch the light from the chandeliers. Afterward, there was a reception in one of the Musikverein's elegant side rooms. Lily became something of an attraction, with people coming over to congratulate her and her parents. Music teachers asked about her training. Other parents wanted to know how early she had started playing, and fellow contestants asked if she knew any other pieces. Lily answered politely but grew increasingly tired as the evening wore on. When she began leaning against her father's leg, eyes drooping, they knew it was time to leave. As they gathered their things, the director of the competition approached them. "Before you go," she said, "I wanted to let you know that we've received inquiries from several music schools and orchestras. They were quite impressed and are interested in special opportunities for Lily." She handed them a folder. "These are some possibilities to consider when you return home. No pressure, of course." Dad accepted the folder with mixed feelings. "Thank you. We're committed to ensuring Lily's childhood remains balanced. Music is wonderful, but it's just one part of her life." The director nodded approvingly. "The wisest approach. Talent like hers is precious and must be nurtured carefully, not exploited." Outside, the Vienna night was cool and star-filled. Lily, now riding on her father's shoulders, pointed upward. "Look at all the little lights," she said drowsily. "They look like music notes." "How do music notes look?" Grandmother asked, curious about this comparison. Lily yawned. "When I play, I see little dots of light dancing. Different colors for different songs. Mr. Beethoven's song has gold and blue lights." Her parents exchanged surprised glances. They had never heard her describe music this way before. This unusual form of sensory connection that might explain her extraordinary interpretation. "What color were the lights when you played today?" Mom asked gently, but Lily didn't answer. Her head had dropped onto her father's, eyes closed in exhausted sleep. The gold medal still clutched in her small hand. A 4-year-old child once again, dreaming perhaps of music only she could see. The flight home seemed much shorter than the journey to Vienna. Lily slept for most of it, the gold medal still tucked safely in her backpack where she could reach in and touch it occasionally, as if making sure it wasn't just a dream. Her parents used the quiet hours to talk about what had happened and what might come next. The folder from the competition director contained invitations that would have seemed impossible just weeks ago. Offers for Lily to perform with youth orchestras, scholarship offers from prestigious music schools, even an invitation to play at a children's concert series at Carnegie Hall. "It's overwhelming," Mom whispered, careful not to wake Lily. "She's still so young," Dad nodded, looking at their daughter's peaceful sleeping face. "We need to be careful. I've seen too many gifted children push too hard, too fast. They burn out, or worse, they start to hate the thing they once loved." Grandmother, seated across the aisle, leaned over. "Remember why we encouraged her music in the first place," she said softly. "Not for medals or applause, but because it brought her joy." They agreed to take things slowly, to consider opportunities carefully, and above all, to make sure Lily's relationship with music remained one of love and discovery, rather than pressure and obligation. The news of Lily's achievement had traveled home ahead of them. When they landed, Professor Zhang was waiting at the airport, beaming with pride. Several local reporters were there too, hoping for interviews with the young prodigy who had taken the classical music world by surprise. Lily, still drowsy from the long flight, clung to her father's neck as cameras flashed. The family politely declined interviews, promising to share their story once they'd rested. "She's still just a little girl who needs her sleep," Mom explained firmly as they made their way to the car. Home looked exactly as they had left it, yet somehow different. Lily ran straight to the piano in the living room, climbing onto the bench as if greeting an old friend. "I missed you," she told it, running her fingers lightly over the keys. The following days brought a flurry of attention. The local newspaper ran a front-page story. The school where Lily's parents taught held a special assembly to recognize her achievement. Their phone rang constantly with congratulations, questions, and offers. Through it all, they tried to maintain a sense of normalcy. Lily still had her regular play dates, still watched her favorite cartoons, still had afternoon naps. The only difference was that she now practiced with even greater enthusiasm, often asking to play longer than her scheduled time. "It's like Vienna woke something up in her," Dad remarked one evening, listening to Lily work on a new piece, a simple Mozart sonatina that Professor Zhang had suggested as her next challenge. A week after their return, they received a package from Vienna, a professional recording of Lily's performance. That evening, they all gathered in the living room to watch it. Seeing her performance from the audience's perspective was a revelation. The camera had captured everything. The way Lily's face changed when she played, shifting from childlike to something deeper and more knowing. The absolute stillness of the audience. The judges' reactions as they realized what they were witnessing. When it ended, Lily looked thoughtful. "I played it better in Vienna than I do at home," she said. "Why do you think that is?" Professor Zhang asked. He had joined them for this first viewing, curious to see what his student had accomplished. Lily considered the question with surprising depth for a 4-year-old. The piano was bigger, so it had more music inside it. And the room was special, like it was made for music to live in. Professor Zhang nodded approvingly. "Very perceptive. The Musikverein does have exceptional acoustics, and that Bösendorfer Grand is one of the finest instruments in the world. But don't forget, it was your fingers that brought the music to life." As summer turned to fall, they settled into a new routine. Lily now had lessons 3 times a week with Professor Zhang, who had rearranged his schedule to devote more time to her development. They had carefully selected a few local performance opportunities: a charity concert at the Children's Hospital, a special event at the public library, a guest appearance with a youth orchestra. Each time Lily played for an audience, her confidence grew. Yet she remained refreshingly unaffected by the attention. After one particularly successful performance, a woman in the audience asked for her autograph. "What's an autograph?" Lily whispered to her mother. Mom explained, and Lily carefully wrote her name in large, wobbly letters on the program. Then she added a little drawing of a piano beside it. "So you remember what it's for?" she told the woman seriously. The invitation to play at Carnegie Hall was the most exciting opportunity of all. After much discussion, her parents decided to accept it. The concert was part of a series featuring exceptional young musicians, and Lily would play just one piece, Fur Elise, of course, as part of a varied program. Preparing for this performance became a family project. They talked about New York, showed Lily pictures of the famous hall, and helped her practice with renewed focus. Professor Zhang added an extra lesson each week, working not just on technical aspects, but on how to handle a larger space and a bigger audience. "The most important thing," he reminded Lily, "is to play as if you're alone in your living room, just enjoying the music for yourself. The audience will feel what you feel." The night before they left for New York, Lily had trouble falling asleep. Mom found her sitting up in bed, looking at the picture book about Carnegie Hall they had bought her. "Are you worried about playing in such a big place?" Mom asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. Lily shook her head. "I'm excited, but I was thinking about something." "What's that, sweetie?" "In Vienna, I played Mr. Beethoven's song for all those people, and they liked it." "They loved it," Mom corrected with a smile. "So in New York, can I play something new? After Fur Elise?" Mom was surprised. This hadn't been part of the plan. "What did you have in mind?" Lily's eyes shone with excitement. I've been working on something with Professor Zhang. It's a surprise. The next morning, Mom spoke with Professor Zhang before their flight. He confirmed that Lily had indeed been secretly working on a second piece, a simple but lovely Schumann composition from Album for the Young called Melody. She's been very determined to learn it properly, he explained. She wanted to surprise you and her father. I think she's ready, but of course it's your decision whether to include it in the program. After discussing it with the concert organizers in New York, they agreed that Lily could play both pieces, Fur Elise as announced, followed by Melody as a surprise encore if all went well. Carnegie Hall was everything they had imagined and more. The history of the place was palpable, all the legendary musicians who had performed on that same stage. During the sound check, Lily walked out to the center of the vast stage, looking up at the tiers of seating that would soon be filled with people. It's like a giant music box, she whispered in awe. That evening, the concert hall filled with an eager audience. The program included a 12-year-old violinist, a 9-year-old cello prodigy, and several other remarkable young musicians. Lily was scheduled to perform last. Backstage, she waited quietly, listening to the other performances with genuine interest. Her parents were struck by how calm she seemed, far more composed than they felt. When her turn came, Dad knelt to straighten her dress one last time. "Remember, just you and the music," he said. Lily nodded, then walked out onto the stage with small, measured steps. The audience's reaction was audible, surprised murmurs at her tiny size followed by warm applause. She had become something of a sensation since Vienna, with videos of her performance widely shared online. She approached the gleaming grand piano at the center of the stage, adjusted the bench with help from a stage assistant, and settled herself. For a moment, she sat perfectly still, hands in her lap, gathering herself just as she had done in Vienna. Then she began to play Fur Elise, the piece that had started this whole journey. Her interpretation had evolved even in the months since the competition. There was new confidence in her playing, a deeper understanding of the music's emotional landscape. When the final notes faded, the applause was immediate and enthusiastic. Lily stood and gave her practiced bow, now more graceful than the awkward one in Vienna. As the applause continued, she glanced off stage to where her parents stood. Dad nodded encouragingly. Instead of leaving the stage, Lily returned to the piano. A curious hush fell over the audience. This wasn't on the program. Without introduction, she began to play Schumann's Melody, a piece that, while technically simpler than Fur Elise, required genuine emotional sensitivity to perform effectively. Her small fingers moved with delicate precision, drawing out the singing quality of the melody that gave the piece its name. The audience listened in rapt attention. There was something profoundly moving about watching this young child communicate so eloquently through music, bridging the centuries between Schumann's time and the present, with her innate understanding of what makes a melody touch the heart. When she finished, the response was even more enthusiastic than before. People rose to their feet, applauding not just the novelty of her youth, but the genuine artistry of her playing. Lily's smile as she took her final bow was radiant. She waved to the audience with childlike openness before running off stage and into her mother's waiting arms. "I did it. I played both songs," she exclaimed, bouncing with excitement. "You certainly did," Mom said, blinking back tears. "What made you want to learn a second piece?" Lily looked up with eyes full of simple wisdom. "Because one song isn't enough to say everything I feel about music." In that moment, her parents knew with certainty that regardless of where this journey might lead, whether to world stages or simply to a lifetime of musical enjoyment, they had done right by their daughter. They had recognized her gift and nurtured it without forcing it, allowed it to grow at its own pace, guided by Lily's own love for the piano. As they left Carnegie Hall that night, a light snow had begun to fall. Lily, tired but happy, reached for both her parents' hands. "Can we get ice cream to celebrate?" she asked, reminding them that despite her remarkable talent, she was still very much a child with a child's simple desires. "Absolutely," Dad laughed, swinging her hand as they walked. "I think playing at Carnegie Hall definitely deserves ice cream." "With sprinkles," Lily added firmly. "With extra sprinkles," Mom agreed. And so they walked through the gently falling snow, A normal family in most ways, extraordinary in others, united by love, music, and the understanding that true success isn't measured in applause or accolades, but in the joy found along the way.